Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Hello to everyone who is joining us today, and welcome to another insightful conversation hosted by Elderly Care India in collaboration with 50 Plus Assist. Today, we are discussing something that quietly shapes the quality of life for millions of older adults: the building environment or the built environment around them. The ways our home, buildings, communities are designed can either support the aging with dignity or can create a daily obstacle in their lives. And India currently is a home for more than 150 million people above the age of 60. So, and as we all know, this number is going to increase by multiple times by 2050. And 1 in 5 Indians will be a senior citizen by that time. So, with us, joining us today is Poornima P, an architect, a design management professional, an extensive experienced person in healthcare and senior infra living. Poornima has previously designed development at Columbia Asia Hospital, served as Vice President Design and Development. And to talk more about Poornima with me is my lovely co-host Pankaj ji. So, up onto you, Pankaj ji.
Thank you, Dr. Mrigna. It's, as usual, a pleasure to be on this podcast. And today we have a very special guest all the way from Bangalore. Not only because of her experience, because for a subject which is very close to my heart, that is the design aspects of a senior living facility.
Poornima was formerly associated with
The very large group, probably one of the largest groups who are into senior living projects, that is called Columbia Pacific Group. And the parent company, which was or which is Columbia Hospitals. So she is a very senior person who has expertise in design and construction, specifically with design and the pre-construction part of it. So we really look forward to a lot of learning on the finer aspects of how a senior citizen's home should be, or how a retirement community should be developed, and what are the key features which can be incorporated even at the house level. So welcome, Poornima. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Pankaj. Thank you so much, Pankaj and Dr. Mrigna, for this opportunity. Yeah, I'll be very happy to share whatever knowledge which is there in this area, in this domain of senior living, to the larger public.
So Poornima, like somebody who has really worked with this particular structural part of it, especially in case of senior living or healthcare architecture in general. Can you please tell us a little, and especially our listeners who are listening maybe about this thing for the first time, probably, how important is accessibility and the built environment for seniors? To make it more elaborate, maybe perhaps you can also explain what happens when homes are not designed for aging.
Sure. Yeah, this is accessibility is something which is always, I would say, needs to be understood to greater depths, especially when it is coming to senior living communities. So, when I'm currently working as an independent consultant with different groups, one question which comes always is when a person enters an independent living community, they're at an age of 55, 60, 65. They don't require a wheelchair, they don't require a grab bar, they don't require a handrail. Then why are we doing all this? So that is some question which comes out of curiosity from many people. So to me, accessibility means helping a person age in place. So when you call a home a senior friendly home, irrespective of the age of the person now, when their needs change with age, the home should still cater to their requirements. So that's the biggest requirement of accessibility. Today you may not need it, but tomorrow to add it may be a larger challenge. So that's where accessibility kind of plays an important role. And the other aspect which I feel is very important is the accessibility provides an older adult a longer period to live independently with the provision of space for a wheelchair turning or to manage on your own with a self-operated wheelchair. It is always much better than being assisted. Whether a person can afford an assistance or not afford an assistance is a secondary question. The moment somebody helps you, you don't have an accessible bathroom, for example, in a house. Somebody has to help you go sit down, then you don't have a hand shower. Simple things like a hand shower makes it very easy for a person to live independently for a longer period of time, which, in my view, helps to maintain their dignity and self-esteem for a longer period. So that way, it is much more than just design elements. It helps in a much more useful way of using the space. So, and the third most important aspect of the accessibility guidelines is fall prevention. Lot of the measures which are mentioned in the accessibility guidelines target towards prevention of falls, and falls is something which really kind of brings down the quality of life for a senior adult. So the small guidelines which says you should have a grab bar at specified locations. But why do you need it at specified locations? The intent is to kind of prevent a fall, which can really deteriorate the quality of life. Higher lux levels, very simple to do, but that may be a reason for a fall. So these are all small accessibility parameters actually plays much more role than just wheelchair accessibility throughout the home. So a self-operated wheelchair, if it can help a person to manage independently for a longer period, it definitely adds value. So that's my views on accessibility.
No, I think they're very valid, and considering many times we feel aging challenges are purely medical,
Yeah.
which they are not.
Yeah.
The issues can actually be environmental, and because of environmental factors, like for example, not being able to, like you picked up a very right example, not being able to pull a chest shot towards your own self.
Yes.
That may lead to somebody hiring a attendant, hiring a help, and
Yes.
putting more weight on the infrastructure, the financial condition of the individual versus something that can enable them for longer to live a independent life, as independent as possible. So I think that's a very valid point, Poornima.
So in India, still, because the support systems are not as expensive as other countries, there is always a question that if somebody can afford to have two people to help them, then why do they need to operate a wheelchair on their own? So these are like, but operating on their own, their level of independence is what kind of adds value to it more than somebody else being there to assist.
No, definitely very insightful, and what you said is very relevant. The accessibility part of it and the independence part of it, because as we age, what Dr. Mrigna said about the statistics, I think more people are going to be staying alone over a period of time, and that is where our independence will become more critical, because family structures are changing. So the number of people staying as a couple or as individuals alone would increase. And with the cost of manpower, today it may be still affordable, but in the next 10, 15 years, when the manpower costs go up, then for small things also it will become very expensive. So as an extension to what you said, Poornima, what are the finer elements of accessibility or the built environment which should be catered for in a retirement community or assisted living community or even at a home level? Because most of us typically know, okay, if you have a bathroom, you just put up a grab bar without understanding the height or the significance of it, or okay, just make the tiles into a anti-skid, for which we'll just tell the contractor, भैया मेरे को anti-skid tile install कर दीजिए. So beyond that, I think the overall awareness level is very low. So what are the, let's say, the most important elements you would say which can make a difference in the overall independent living?
So accessibility starts right from the doorway. So having it's like an interconnected flow all across. So you make one space accessible with the associated spaces not accessible, it really does not help. So it starts right from your doorway where you would need a wider doorway to enter into your home. All the smaller things like there is a the viewer in the door, the height at which it has to be installed. You may need a second level where you need to install a second door level. And coming inside, you need a clear passageway. You should not have thresholds on the floor or a level difference on the floor where you cannot move without on a wheelchair. It should not inhibit your movement. You should be able to go. And you should have this turning radius at specified locations where you can kind of turn the wheelchair on your own and go back to wherever you need to reach. So, like for example, spaces like kitchen, it goes even to the details like you have given turning radius at specific places. So some places what we see is the heights of the cabinets. They are too high or the countertop lighting is not available. So these are like smaller elements which kind of reduces the accessibility for a person. And when you have the wheelchair turning radius within the kitchen, you go into a sink or a stove, you don't have the provision for the wheelchair to go below it. Then again, it defeats the purpose. The person can go in the kitchen, but they cannot access the stove or the sink or any of those things. They cannot basically function independently over there. So it starts right from circulation spaces across the homes, which many people have a notion that this adds significantly to the area increase. But my viewpoint is little different based on the areas. Based on, if you think of accessibility on day one, it's very easy to integrate with most of the designs. For example, a 14 by 11 size for a bedroom. It's a standard size in any of the mid segment communities or on the higher segment communities. So if you position your bed correctly over there and you keep your furniture planning in a way that keeping in mind that somebody on a wheelchair may need to use the space, it can definitely be set up easily. So each space, it is not a huge increase in area. It is just most of it is can be handled by thoughtful design, but a slight increase in area may be required to cater to the accessibility aspects across the home. So it should start from space planning and gradually it should go into every stage, like heights of the switch sockets, whether it is accessible or not. And where the switch sockets are located is also very important. Somebody is on a bed and the switch is near the door side. For them to get up, go, and where all you need two-way switches. What should be the lux levels within the homes? And what do you do if there is a power outage? So how are the people protected during those timings when there is a power outage and the person is somewhere? How do you prevent a fall? And again, like the topic which you were telling, like the grab bars, just giving a grab bar will not make the bathroom accessible for a wheelchair user. So there are these transfer-based spaces and all that which you need to give, where a person can comfortably transfer from a wheelchair to a WC or to a shower seat, and heights and distances at which you position your hand shower, for example, from the shower seat, how easily you can reach the accessory, use it on your own. Where do you put the receptacles, the height, whether it is appropriate for a person who's standing as well as on a wheelchair. So that is what kind of drives the accessibility. It should start from space planning and go till the smallest level of interior design, like no knobs, handles on the doors, height of the handles, how easily you can operate a window. So all these smaller, finer details, it should start reach over there. Then only you can call the home kind of accessible end to end.
Wow, I never knew that there are so many aspects to it besides the grab bars. And generally, very interesting to hear this perspective. I can relate to you because probably once or twice a week, my own mother will say, can you pick up this box from the cupboard? Because what she could do, let's say 20, 25 years back or 20 years back, now
Yeah,
she can't do it.
do it. Yeah,
So, probably because of the strength and because of the stability, you can't climb the stool because you become shaky. And what I've
yeah,
also seen is over a period of time as you age, I think you start bending down to a certain extent. So
mm.
it becomes even more challenging.
Challenging. Yes, yes,
Your back also becomes a little frail as well as become bent. So
yeah.
definitely, I think what you are saying is very important at the ground level. What you are saying is it's both at the modification level also we can do that.
At the modification level, definitely there are limitations. But if you see, there are certain, if you want to not do any modification at all and you want to make your house little more senior friendly, things like maintaining a higher lux level for the light fixtures, having grab bars, and small transitions on the floors instead of where there is a level difference. Have a small ramp along with your step to move in. So, and even on the floorings also, without physical infrastructure change, you do a non-slippery coatings and all that are available these days. So you do that. That is the first level. So it can improve slightly from what it was. So to the next level would be widening your door widths to kind of how you can improve the bathroom doors. How can you make it wider? You can make your bathroom door outside access outdoor with an opening outward, for example, and things like changing all your latches from all your doors, remove it, put locks which you have an access from outside for an emergency access. So these are smaller details which you can still do without major changes. But yes, it cannot be 100% accessible, but it definitely can be improved from where it was originally. So, and fall prevention, definitely you can do smaller things which will help you to kind of address some of the concerns. But if you have to have it fully accessible, little bit of modifications on the infrastructure would also be required. Bathroom is the biggest challenge we have always felt, because giving an accessible bathroom, increasing the size of the bathroom, that is something which we have found as a challenge. Bedroom, you can still manage by resizing your cot, you can still give your this one, the circulation spaces, and even changing the furniture arrangement to some extent, you should be able to manage. But the biggest challenge is usually the washroom, where you might require a bit of a increase in the physical infrastructure to be done. Without that, it really does not become completely accessible for a user.
That's very well said, Poornima, and considering what we do at 50 plus here, where we work at home care. So we have these challenges every now and then.
Yeah,
When we see somebody with Parkinson's who is totally independent right now, becoming to a dependent phase, to a phase of walker to wheelchair transitioning. And very well said that the ideal is that we start preparing the space in their 50s. So by the time they are in their 70s and they have a certain level of dependence, they already are so familiar with the whole structure.
yeah,
And I think cognitively also it really helps in that case,
yeah,
especially people with dementia. And because in India, we have to agree that most seniors still prefer to age in their own homes
on home.
rather than to an institutional space.
Yes,
And like you rightly picked up, the modification is what we need to make it more senior friendly versus, compulsive changes. So my next question to you would be about the housing infrastructure that's already existing.
yeah,
So we have really heard about words like retrofitting and renovating, and every now and then we hear, that these certain older buildings are being renovated or being modified or retrofitted for senior living spaces.
yeah.
So, what is that as an individual, as somebody who is probably doing it for my own space, let's say my own home? What are the points to keep in mind while doing this? For a layman who is probably our listener right now, is listening to this podcast, What would be your suggestions?
Yeah, so the one of the most important thing which I would say is to kind of prevent falls. So that should be the first priority. So coming to that, if you're modifying your own home, maybe you are not in a position to kind of break walls and do that kind of changes, then maybe at the end, wherever there are flow transitions, those should be replaced. If there is a step, you should have a small ramp or which can be easily added. And even where there are flow transitions, there are a lot of profiles, transition trims and all that available for smaller level differences where you can put it across. Rounded corners, something which you have to do at the construction stage, but there are again profiles which you can kind of do to kind of the most dangerous exposed corners of the home. For example, you can have those profiles in place to kind of make it more accessible. Flooring, there are coatings available which you can do to make it less slippery than the original one. It may not be 100% anti-skid flooring, but definitely it can be improved to a great extent. And coming to the locks and the handles, this is something which you can do a lot of retrofit. And lighting levels. If you change the color temperature of your fittings, make it uniform, change the fittings to kind of glare, less of glare and glare free, increase the illumination levels, which can easily be done with increasing the wattage of fittings and all that. So basically your floor, your walls, your transitions, and the lighting is taken care of. Then small additions like the grab bars in the bathrooms, a shower seat, add a hand shower in the bathroom for assisted bathing. So when we talk about accessibility, we think of a person using it. Even for a caregiver, it is not very easy to handle somebody who is unwell. So the moment you have these accessibility provisions, it becomes easy for them to kind of handle a aged person, transferring the person from a wheelchair to a shower seat and all that becomes much more easier. So bathroom, if you are doing a renovation, fixture positions are very important, heights and fixtures. Those level of modifications itself will help in an existing home. So how you have positioned your shower versus WC versus wash basins, and how much clearance you are able to best case manage, and what is doable within that will have to be evaluated in that case.
No, I think very well said. And I think just an added on question to you. Do you think really that builders or architects or people working in the sector generally are getting more aware towards, senior friendly designs? Like you still feel that people are, just following the lay of land and, just following the old patterns of what they've learned in their colleges? What's your opinion on
Actually, the awareness is coming in the market now, I will say. Initial days, it was, earlier days, it used to be very difficult to conceptualize, except for some international design firms who used to kind of specialize in this area. They were very passionate about this. But for example, if you take real estate architects, where they are challenged for every square feet of area, this is kind of an area where the awareness is kind of increasing, but I can say it is improving with time. That's what we can say. But major challenge I have felt is the intent of accessibility is not understood clearly. It's more of why do we need to do it? Is it really required to have 5 feet space next to your bed? Why don't you put a wardrobe here on the foot side if you have 1200 mm? So these kind of questions are asked to them also, because they also work within the limits of area, super built up area and all those things. So what I feel is there is no structure currently in place which defines a senior living home. What are the acceptable ones and what is not acceptable? Like NBC says you cannot build more than 45 meters in a particular area. Nobody questions it as such because that's the norm. So if we have norms or guidelines in place, it will be helpful. And in India, currently, so many norms are there, so many guidelines are there, but there is no rule in place. And even when they go for approvals, there is no separate section defining what a senior living community should be. It is merged with the residential apartments. So that way the clarity is little bit less. So developers definitely are interested to come into the space of senior living. And they are very interested to develop this as a separate kind of a domain. But in the technical field, like architects, consultants, it is still in a very initial stage where they are kind of understanding that there is something called senior living, which has different requirements from regular residential. So many times they feel, okay, old people are living in regular apartments. Then why do we need this? So that's where a bit of an understanding is required.
I totally understand where you're coming from and what you spoke about these final points. Again, coming back to a personal example, we have a house which is a duplex house.
Yeah.
So after a certain point, my father stopped going on the first floor.
First floor, yeah.
Okay, he is only 87 right now, and but then it becomes a problem, and out of his own uh, I won't call it ego, but of his own pride, he said, no, if I have to go, I'll walk it up. But eventually, what I said is, okay, we'll put up a internal staircase lift. So it is a chair which goes up and down.
Yeah.
So with that, I found very helpful. Then a couple of times while sitting on a chair, typically India, we have these plastic chairs when you're sitting outside. He used to have this kind of a delirium and he fell down two, 3 times.
Yeah.
Then I realized there's something wrong, and I got him a little more sturdier chair. Again, a plastic chair, but then it was very, very sturdy, which was very comfortable to him. That is the second part which we started incorporating. Then the third part is while sleeping. After a certain point, if you have that, uh, if you have a bad dream or if you have some kind of other issue, you tend to fall down. So twice when he fell down, we really got scared because once he was on the floor for almost an hour and a half, and he couldn't reach his mobile phone or there was no emergency button to call. So what we did was we tried to put up a kind of a mattress underneath, or then finally we got a kind of bed railing, which was very, very helpful. So I can totally relate to what kind of features you are saying, and I'm very sure that a lot of people, a lot of senior citizens and their families would benefit from these kind of inputs, because this is something which is very, very common across all the parameters.
And emergency call systems nowadays come in kind of in mobile devices as such, where the earlier ones, like you had to do a lot of infrastructure change to kind of create a alarm or a panic button within the home. That challenge is lesser now because a lot of wearable devices are coming in, where you kind of click of a button, you are intimated that you are in problem to somebody close to you who can help you out. So wearables is also a solution, especially in retrofit, where you can where it becomes difficult to do wiring and install new things. That is a very simple solution which can help actually.
When you mentioned about these doorknobs and door handles, since it was not possible for us to change the direction of the door of opening outside, and I used to tell my father, okay, when you're going going to the washroom, don't lock the door, because it becomes very difficult for us to respond. So what we did was we just made a small latch, which could be just with a pin, could be opened inside. So I think that kind of small, not expensive modifications really helped us. So coming to my other question was, when you spoke about the National Building Code and the overall, can you just tell us a little bit more as to how this entire delivery of code and implementation of code happens at the national level. Uh, is it a state subject or it is to be adhered at the central level? Just wanted to understand that perspective.
Usually, it is most of the states are driven by the National Building Code. So there are localized bylaws in Bangalore city, for example. There are 4 or 5 governing bodies having their own bylaws, which are in place already. But the overall guiding feature most of the time is the National Building Code. And with respect to accessibility, I should say National Building Code has done a very beautiful job of putting together all the accessibility parameters. So when we compare between American Disability Act, for example, and NBC, many times we have seen that the NBC caters to much more requirements than even ADA. But the awareness of this section again is very less, and it is not a rule. It is again a guideline which is not enforced in place. Most of the guidelines, although it is at a central level, it has to be implemented at the local statutory governing bodies level also. So what we have found as a challenge in senior living is that, for example, when we are doing an apartment, senior living, independent living apartment, for example, the national currently it goes under there is no separate submission for a senior living. There is no category in the National Building Code also for senior living. So what happens is any of the sold properties, on sale properties, goes into residential. For an example, residential and occupancy is defined as per NBC. For a 2-bedroom is 4 to 5 people, and a 3-bedroom is around 5 or 6 people. And all your water tank sizing, your fire tank sizing, your STP sizing is all done based on the occupancy arrived at for this. So in senior living, we are very sure we are not going to have an average occupancy of maximum 2. It's not more than that. There'll be very few places where it's more than 2 actually. But still, we have to design for 5 persons or 6 persons per apartment, because this is not a separate section of the NBC. So we end up doing larger tanks, larger STPs just to cater to the compliances, which again loads back to the cost, again impacts affordability of the product. So it's actually, if we had have a separate section, it will be very helpful and straightforward for everybody to implement, telling that these are the minimum. If it's a senior living apartment, senior friendly apartment, these particular sections of the NBC needs to be complied, and this is the calculation basis that you need to have in place. And one more aspect in the codes, which is currently not there, but may be very important for high-rise senior living. So places like Mumbai, where the costs are very high, there may not be an option to keep everything low-rise. So the fire and safety aspects is something which has to be separately defined for senior living, because we need to have at least the detection systems have to be there within the corridors, and whether it is required by law or not required by law, it's required because a fire is a major problem in a senior living where people can't evacuate on their own. So these are a few things which we feel if we had a guideline or a bylaw, it would have been we would have had more senior friendly buildings in place automatically, without kind of having different thought process and iterations to it. But code has defined it very well, but implementation has to be kind of come into place, and section has to be separate for senior living, because requirements are quite different over there.
No, I think I concur with what you're saying, and I also feel that since India's population is so rapidly aging, so we need to be in a phase where we're building awareness about these age-friendly designs and
Yes.
these codes and these guidelines to be implemented. Like you picked up a very valid point. What happens if there is a fire?
Mm.
And we are yet, as a country, not prepared for a senior living on fire, to be very honest. And it might sound scary for few, but it also is very eye-opening for people who are sitting at the high ranks. for making these guidelines, and rather than guidelines, now they need to be like a bylaw, which are more implementable,
Yes.
because this refers to life of so many people in danger, to be
And
very frank.
evacuation is completely different. Evacuation is not same as a residential apartment in a senior living. There may be people who need somebody to reach to them to kind of help them evacuate from the building. That will be more of assisted evacuation. So in those cases, things like having a fire rated main door or the external walls fire rated may help to give you that kind of a time gap to kind of assist a person to come out of the building. But problem is these solutions come at a price. So if it has to be if it is a law, there are no questions asked on it. It will be implemented, and there is more safety to the buildings also.
Correct. Correct. So honestly, Poornima, we have heard that you have designed so many senior living operations in India. You work with rather one of few of the largest senior living operations, from retirement communities to assisted living spaces to healthcare integrated housings. So, in your opinion, what is the key lessons you learned while you were designing few of them? If you could share like a few examples, a few things that really spoke to you, that we would love to listen to your experience while you were doing these retirement communities or assisted living homes or such senior housing.
Sure. So the one major learning which we had was to make the realization that senior living is a service segment. Even independent living, it is more of a service product than a real estate product. So that is a big differentiator, because everybody compares loading as compared to the next door apartment, per square feet pricing as compared to the next door apartment. But it is a completely different product. And many times people are very less concerned in terms of even pricing on the product price. It's more of the service charge which comes into play to decision making, because that is something which is kind of creates a lot of insecurity in people, whether the money I have will be will I be able to afford the service charge for a particular period of time. So in senior living, basically, while designing, service charges is something which you have to keep in mind, that what will bring down the service charge and how it can be optimized. So, for example, while designing, accessibility is a non-compromisable aspect. We have to keep the community accessible when it has to be designed for senior living. That has to be done, at least for the primary resident of every home. There should be a space where they can access comfortably on any mobility device. And one more aspect of accessibility is that it's not always long-term accessibility issues. People may have a post-surgery recovery phase of 6 months. So that's also something which never comes to our mind. We think of somebody on 80 plus on a wheelchair, but it's not like that. There will be events where you have a short-term accessibility problem. So at that time also, it's important to have the accessibility in place. So codes are very well defined. So we just need to kind of follow the codes and implement them in the design for accessibility. And next aspect is the community spaces. This is something in larger senior living communities, majorly the independent living communities. What has to be the community spaces that has to be defined? In my view, this has to be kind of very much what are the cultural aspects of the space? What kind of recreational activities are people interested to do? And what is it that they will be able to do? That should kind of drive the design of the common spaces. It should have a regional cultural context to it. Otherwise, there'll be spaces built but not used, which will kind of defeat the purpose of the common areas. And this again adds to the affordability aspect, because it loads onto the total built, and maintenance cost also will be there. So reusability of spaces is something. So basically, your activity, what is the cultural and demographic requirement of the people whom you are expecting to use the space should drive the activity calendars, and the activity calendar should kind of drive what spaces you should have, and whether it can be indoor, outdoor, whether flexibility of use of spaces, how you can create that will play an important role to kind of optimize the physical infrastructure requirement without compromising on the lifestyle requirements for the seniors.
So this has been very fascinating for me, to be very honest, Poornima, because we have spoken to somebody before you in one of the other podcasts who was one of the people designing these communities, and he was like into the sales part of it.
Yeah.
And he had put a very valid point to us that, sometimes people just buy communities or buy spaces in a community because of the facilities that are available.
Yeah.
They may or may not use it.
Yeah.
But then, it becomes like a very bright point. Look, my community has like a tennis court.
Yeah.
And then nobody uses tennis court by the end of it, we know.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So rather than
Swimming
that,
pool,
putting
for
up,
example, is a element like that. Swimming pool. How many
Yeah.
communities use a pool? You don't know, but the amount maintenance cost associated with it, which will come back into your monthly service charges. So that's everything. If it can be related to the service charges, it will incur, and whether that affordability should define kind of square footage and driven by the what people actually need. Not just because you are giving a games room with all Western games, which may not be used in a tier 2, tier 3 city at all. It really defeats the purpose of having the spaces over there. So basically, there are a lot of limitations to it. So within the limitation, it has to be kind of best utilized to kind of make maximum advantage of the space that you have. And the last part is basically what we always look at is physical well-being. What are the components? Easiest way to design a senior living is majorly three headings, which I always feel is important. One is the physical well-being. Physical well-being of a person is driven by all your accessibility parameters, having facilities to exercise, walk, yoga, and all those things to help them stay healthy for a longer period of time will come under that. And nutritional is a part of that because people are not able to cook on a regular basis. So the support of the kitchen, the nutrition part of it is kind of very important. Then comes the emotional, social, mental well-being of a person. So that is completely varies from place to place, community to community. It has to be kind of defined little differently. Exactly from the West, we take features and implement it. May not be really tier 1 cities, it may work very well, but going to tier 2, tier 3, it may not really be very helpful. So the thought process should be physical well-being, what all you need, the emotional, social, and cultural well-being, what all you need for that, what kind of gathering spaces, small and large gathering spaces, and how innovatively you can design so that your build cost and the maintenance cost comes down will be important to it. And last but not the least is the safety security components. That is kind of very important is what I've felt. Compared to a residential building, for example, you cannot have multiple entry exit points all across. You cannot have people walking into any floor to any home all the time. How do you limit that? Then how do you monitor who's coming in and out? And how is the safety and security of the person ensured within the community? That's what is very important. When it comes to assisted living, it is completely different. That is more of a care model where accessibility remains the same, but the other infrastructure requirements will be more towards care and less towards the lifestyle spaces. So that again, that is completely many times there is a confusion between assisted and independent. People ask, why don't we have nurse stations in an independent living, which you don't really need, but assisted living definitely it is required. So that differentiation needs to be very clearly understood. Like for example, the dementia care is completely different from all of this. So we cannot have each of this have to be kind of designed and defined very distinctly from each other. So that's what I feel is a simple what the person needs should be translated to design numbers and all the other parameters. Driven by affordability, definitely, of what is the affordability benchmarks which are there.
So, Poornima, my last question to you would be is since you have worked in both the settings, the hospital setting as well as a senior living setting, uh, is it similar or there is a certain element or difference when you spoke about assisted living just right now? I couldn't relate to it, and that is why I thought about this question.
Yeah.
Because when we do the planning for a wheelchair user, so hospitals also have wheelchair users. At a home level, also you have wheelchair users.
Yeah.
So, just in a brief, what would be the three key features which would differentiate between a hospital planning as well as a senior planning?
Yeah, hospitals, majorly it is designed for people who are unwell. So I feel when you design for accessibility in a hospital, it's more of assisted, there are very less scenarios where a person is on a self-operated wheelchair in a hospital, for example, because it's for a couple of days and they have the nurse call system, nurse comes, supports them for whatever they want, which is not there in a senior living. You don't have a nurse coming to attend to every need of yours. And one is short term and the other is long term. So a clinical setting is definitely not, even if it is an assisted living community, a clinical setting is not something which we will enjoy having. So from the design of the spaces, interiors and all that, it should be distinctly different from a hospital. The feel should be completely different. Functionalities, yes, some of the elements should be there, like nurse call system should be there, and for an assisted living, but it should distinctly look different from a hospital room, because that's something people don't like to associate with. And many times we ask for wider corridors, but in a residential setting like an assisted living or a independent living, for example, you don't have the case of a bed movement or a stretcher movement all the time, two stretchers moving next to parallel to each other. So designing for that kind of becomes an overkill for a independent or assisted, while it's essential in a hospital. Without a 2.4-meter corridor, for example, in a hospital you cannot manage, because there is a scenario where two beds are moving next to each other. But assisted independent living, most of the time the stretcher movement, nobody moves around on a stretcher in a community. That is something which is not there at all. And this is most of the time it's an ambulance stretcher or a transfer stretcher which is used. So right from elevators to corridors, this difference has to come, because if it's designed like a hospital, it sometimes becomes an overkill, adding to cost again on a assisted or a independent living community. Because you don't really need that kind of a support. But accessibility is more important, I would say, because hospitals have support systems to take care all the time. Your home is somewhere you need to be more accessible.
No, this has been honestly, Poornima, very fascinating discussion for, I think, both me and Pankaj. And I think there have been multiple key takeaways that we have had uh, from health, defined as health by WHO, that is spiritual, emotional, economical, well-being, and designing space to fit into that WHO definition of health is what I understood from you, and which has been very enlightening, because we have been talking about these things in theories and learning in medical colleges and schools and everything, but how to really put it into action for seniors is what I learned from you today. So that has been my major key takeaway from the whole discussion, and how to promote dignity, prevent falls, promote independence, and hence improving the total well-being of an individual.
Yeah.
Is what I feel, we are aiming at by the end of the day. And in the end, like you said, allowing to let a senior live a life with dignity is what you aim for, till the time they can, till the time it's possible. and which indeed is wonderful, So I really thank you for, coming on our podcast today and, giving your precious time. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers who are watching us today on various platforms, from Apple Podcasts to YouTube to all the other spaces. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really hope that discussions like this inspire more families, architects, and especially policymakers to start thinking about age friendly living spaces, to start thinking about putting this into, like we spoke about, into laws. So, really, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks.
Thank you.
Poornima, once again, thank you for taking out time. And it was really a great learning session for all of us. And with that, we'll sum up this podcast. Thank you very much. Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.